The air in Memphis that July morning was thick and heavy, promising rain. Not just a sprinkle, but a real southern downpour, the kind that drenches you to the bone in seconds. But Marybeth didn't care. She was used to the humidity, to the simmering anticipation that always seemed to hang in the air when Elvis Presley was in town. Today he was rumored to be at Sun's studio working on new music, and Marybeth had been there since dawn, a small, determined figure among a growing crowd of fans. She wasn't loud like some of the girls shrieking and pushing. Marybeth was more of a quiet observer, her heart doing somersaults, just knowing she was in the same city, breathing the same air as him. She held a worn copy of Elvis Presley, his first album, clutched to her chest, its cover a little creased from countless listens, and dreams spun while staring at his defiant pose. Her sign, a simple hand-painted "We love you, Elvis," on a piece of cardboard, rested against her knees. She'd spent hours on it, careful to make sure every letter was perfect, every glittery star just so. Marybeth was 17, a small town girl from Mississippi who'd convinced her aunts to let her visit Memphis for the summer. Her real dream wasn't just to see Elvis, though that was a big part of it. It was to feel like she was part of something bigger, something exciting, something that sparkled with the magic Elvis seemed to carry with him life back home. Felt small, predictable. Here, in Memphis, the rhythm was different, the energy electric. The crowd around Sun's studio grew steadily as the morning wore on. Chatter filled the street, a mix of excitement and gossip. Girls compared their favorite songs, debated his latest haircut, and shared stories of past sightings. Marybeth listened, soaking it all in, feeling a strange sense of belonging she rarely found elsewhere. She was just one face in a sea of adoring fans, but right now that felt like enough. Then the sky cracked. One moment it was just thick and humid, the next a single fat raindrop splattered on her forehead. Then another and another. Within seconds, the heavens opened. It wasn't a gentle shower. It was a torrential downpour, as if a giant bucket had been overturned directly over Memphis. Panic erupted among the fans. Shrieks turned into startled yelps as everyone scrambled for cover. Umbrellas popped open like desperate mushrooms, but many, like Marybeth, hadn't brought one. Her aunt had warned her. "Always carry an umbrella, Marybeth. You never know with these summer storms." But Marybeth, lost in her Elvis-induced haze, had forgotten now she paid the price. Carefully styled hair plastered to her face in an instant. Her thin summer dress clung to her heavy and cold. The ink on her sign began to run, the glitter washing away in streams. Her album, tucked protectively under her arm, was getting soaked through the paper cover. A wave of despair washed over her, far heavier than just the discomfort of the rain. She had waited for hours, dreamed for weeks, and now, not only was she utterly miserable, but she might miss him entirely. What if he just stayed inside? What if he left through a back exit? All her efforts, all her hopes, felt like they were dissolving with the rain. She squeezed her eyes shut, a tear mixing with the rainwater running down her cheek. It wasn't just about getting wet. It was about the crushing disappointment, the feeling that the universe was conspiring against her, the quiet girl who just wanted one moment of magic. She felt foolish standing there drenched and dejected, while others ran for shelter, their enthusiasm dampened, but not extinguished. Her own spirits felt dangerously close to being extinguished entirely. Just as she was about to admit defeat and find a dry spot, a new sound cut through the drumming of the rain. Not the panic shouts of the crowd, but a surge of excited screams even louder than before. A black Cadillac, sleek and gleaming even in the gloom, pulled up slowly to the curb in front of the studio. Marybeth's heart leaped, momentarily forgetting her discomfort. He was here. He was really here. A collective gasp went through the remaining hardy fans who had braved the deluge. Car door opened, and a flash of dark hair, a glimpse of a tailored suit, appeared. It was him, Elvis. He stepped out, And even through the pouring rain, he moved with that unmistakable grace, that effortless cool. He had an umbrella, a large dark one held by a man in a suit who looked like a bodyguard. For a split second, Marybeth felt a pang of relief for him. At least he was protected. But then, as he turned, slightly shielding his face from the water, his gaze swept over the remaining fans, still screaming, still hoping, despite being utterly soaked. His eyes, even from that distance, seemed to glow, picking out individual faces in the blurred, rain-streaked crowd. And then, impossibly, incredibly, they landed on Marybeth. She couldn't explain it. Perhaps it was her bright red dress, now a sodden mess, or the dejected slump of her shoulders, or maybe the ruined sign she still clutched. But his gaze lingered for just a fraction of a second too long. A flicker of something, concern, empathy, crossed his face. The bodyguard started to guide him quickly towards the studio door, but Elvis paused. He seemed to hesitate, looking back at the crowd, at the sheer dedication of these people who stood soaking just for a glimpse of him. And then, against all logic, against the urgency of the moment, he took a small, decisive step forward towards the barrier, towards the fans, towards Marybeth. Marybeth felt her breath catching her throat. The rain was still pounding, soaking her to the core, but a different kind of warmth was spreading through her chest. A warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. This was it. This was the magic she had come for. The world seemed to slow down, the frantic drumming of the rain fading to a distant hum. All Marybeth could hear was the frantic beat of her own heart as Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, took a step towards the screaming fans. His bodyguard, a massive man with a serious expression, looked momentarily flustered, trying to keep Elvis moving, but Elvis, with that easy authority of his, just gave a slight shake of his head. He was in charge even in a downpour. He was truly magnificent, even soaking wet. His dark hair, usually so meticulously styled, was already beginning to dampen and cling to his forehead, giving him a more vulnerable, yet still impossibly handsome look. His suit, a dark, expensive material, was starting to show dark splotches where the rain was soaking in, but he seemed utterly unconcerned. His focus was on the crowd, on the faces pressed against the barrier, desperate for a closer look. Marybeth stood frozen, clutching her ruined album and her dissolving sign. She wasn't screaming like the others now. She couldn't. Her voice was lost somewhere in her throat, tangled with disbelief and a powerful surge of emotion. She just stared, her wide brown eyes fixed on him as he scanned the crowd. He moved with a quiet power distinct from the boisterous energy of the fans. It was a power that came from within, from knowing who he was and the impact he had. He held a large black umbrella, but it seemed almost an afterthought in his hand. The bodyguard, however, was trying valiantly to keep it over Elvis's head, creating a small, moving, dry zone in the midst of the deluge. As Elvis moved closer, his gaze, which had briefly landed on Marybeth before, returned, and this time it held. It wasn't just a fleeting glance or a general sweep over the crowd. He looked directly at her. Marybeth felt a blush creep up her neck despite the cold rain. She was a mess, hair plastered, clothes dripping, probably a streak of glitter on her cheek from the ruined sign. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but she couldn't tear her eyes away from his. His eyes were startlingly blue, even in the dim rain-filled light, and they held an incredible depth. There was no arrogance in them, no weariness, just a genuine curiosity and, surprisingly, a flicker of something that looked like concern. He saw her, not just as another fan in the throng, but as an individual. He saw her shivering shoulders, the way her little summer dress clung to her, the utter defeat in her posture. He saw the ruined sign, the beloved water-damaged album she still clung to. He saw her silent, unwavering adoration despite the misery of the weather. A small smile, gentle and almost private, touched his lips. It wasn't the dazzling stage smile she knew from his album covers and movie stills. This was softer, more human. It was the smile of someone who understood, who genuinely felt for another person. "You're soaked through, darlin'," he murmured, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly clear despite the pounding rain. He didn't shout, he spoke gently, as if they were the only two people there. It was just a few words, but they cut through the noise and the rain and lodged themselves directly in Marybeth's heart. Marybeth could only nod, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. She was incapable of speech. Her mind was a whirlwind of, "He's talking to me. Elvis Presley is talking to me. And what do I say? Oh, what do I say?" But no words came. He took another step, closing the distance between them. The bodyguard tensed, his eyes darting around, but Elvis was focused. The umbrella he held, or rather that the bodyguard held over him, seemed to shrink the space around them, making their interaction feel incredibly intimate in the vast, chaotic scene. Elvis reached out a hand, not to touch her, but to gesture slightly. "You shouldn't be out in this," he repeated, his brow furrowing slightly, as if genuinely concerned for her well-being. "You'll catch your death," Marybeth finally found her voice, a small choked whisper. I wanted to see you." Another soft smile. "I appreciate that, sweetheart, but not at the expense of your health." He looked at her, then at the umbrella in the bodyguard's hand, then back at her. A decision seemed to form in his eyes, quick and impulsive, but born of a genuine desire to help. The bodyguard, sensing a shift, began to usher Elvis forward again, reminding him of his schedule, of the waiting studio engineers. But Elvis paused again, a look of quiet determination settling on his face. He shook his head slightly at the bodyguard, a silent command. He looked at Marybeth one last time, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then, with a fluid motion that surprised everyone, he reached out gently, took the handle of the large black umbrella from his bodyguard's startled grasp, and stepped out from under its shelter. The rain instantly enveloped him, plastering his dark hair to his forehead, soaking his suit in a matter of seconds. The bodyguard gasped, reaching out as if to snatch the umbrella back, but it was too late. Elvis was already turning completely exposed to the deluge and moving directly towards Marybeth. Marybeth watched, wide-eyed, as the king of rock and roll, arguably the most famous man in America at that moment, deliberately, willingly, got himself utterly drenched for her. A lump formed in her throat, so big she thought she might choke on it. The screams of the other fans intensified a mixture of shock and awe. This was not a public relations stunt. This was real. This was pure, unadulterated kindness. And it was all for her. The rain was a cold curtain blurring the world, but Marybeth saw everything with startling clarity. Elvis Presley, completely unprotected, walked the last few steps towards her. The large black umbrella now clutched in his hand. Water streamed down his face, pasting his sideburns to his cheeks, and his perfectly tailored suit was darkening rapidly, sticking to his lean frame. Yet he moved with an easy grace, a gentle determination that seemed to defy the chaos of the storm and the shrieks of the crowd. He stopped directly in front of her, the space between them suddenly feeling vast and intimate all at once. His blue eyes, even clearer now that he was so close, held a warmth that cut through the chill of the rain. He didn't say a word, just extended his arm, offering the umbrella. It was a simple gesture, yet it felt monumental. Marybeth stared at the umbrella, then at his face, then back at the umbrella. Her mind was still reeling. She couldn't believe it. The king of rock and roll, soaking wet, offering her his own umbrella. It was like a scene from a dream, too fantastical to be real. "Here, darlings," Elvis said, his voice a little deeper, now softened by the rain. "You need this more than I do." A small, genuine smile played on his lips, a touch of mischief in his eyes. He wasn't bothered by the drenching. He seemed almost amused by it. Marybeth finally managed to raise her hands, her fingers trembling as they reached for the handle of the umbrella. It was solid, heavy, and strangely warm from his touch. As her fingers brushed against his, a jolt like a tiny electric shock went through her. It was fleeting, but it was enough to make her gasp. His skin was cool and damp from the rain, but her own hand felt fiery hot against it. As she took hold, his fingers briefly closed over hers, a gentle, reassuring squeeze. "There you go," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper meant just for her. He let go and the umbrella was hers. Instantly, the pounding rain on Marybeth's head ceased. A small circle of dryness enveloped her, a fragile bubble of reprieve in the deluge. She looked up at the black canopy, then back at Elvis. He stood there, fully exposed to the elements, water dripping from his chin, his hair plastered to his forehead, but with an expression of quiet satisfaction. He wasn't just kind, he was utterly selfless. "But Mr. Presley," Marybeth stammered, her voice barely audible over the renewed roar of the crowd. You're getting soaked." Guilt, sharp and sudden, pierced through her elation. She couldn't accept this, not if it meant he got sick. He chuckled, a low, easy sound. "Just a little water, sweetheart. Happens to the best of us." He shrugged, the movement causing his wet suit jacket to cling even more. "Besides, I'm going inside. You've got to walk home, I reckon." His bodyguard, who had been hovering nervously, now moved forward decisively. Stepping into the space Elvis had vacated, put a hand on Elvis's shoulder, a silent but firm push towards the studio door. "Mr. Presley, we really need to go." His voice was urgent, his gaze a mixture of exasperation and respect for his boss's sudden chivalrous impulse. Elvis glanced at his bodyguard, then back at Marybeth. He winked, a quick, playful gesture that made her heart flutter. "Take care, now," he said, his voice carrying just above the din. "Don't catch a cold." Then, with a final lingering look that felt like a blessing, he turned. The bodyguard quickly ushered him towards the entrance of Sun's studio, almost pushing him through the door. The moment he disappeared inside, the energy of the crowd seemed to deflate slightly. A collective exhale of awe and disbelief. Marybeth was left standing alone, holding the large black umbrella perfectly dry under its shelter, while the rain continued to rage around her. Her face was flushed, her mind a dizzying swirl of emotions. Joy, pure and incandescent, bubbled up inside her, mixing with a profound sense of gratitude and a lingering touch of bewildered guilt. He had done it. He had really done it. The other fans, those who had witnessed the incredible exchange, were staring at her. Some looked envious, some simply awestruck. Marybeth could feel their gazes, their silent questions. She wanted to explain, to tell them how kind he was, how gentle, how much this meant. But the words were still stuck in her throat, overshadowed by the overwhelming reality of what had just happened. She looked at the umbrella again, its black fabric still wet from the rain it had shielded him from. It smelled faintly of something musky and clean, a subtle scent she immediately associated with him. It wasn't just an umbrella anymore, it was a tangible piece of a moment, a direct connection to the extraordinary kindness of Elvis Presley. It was a shield against the storm, both literal and metaphorical. Her legs felt shaky, but she finally managed to move. Stepping out of the direct line of sight of the studio door, she turned facing the street and started walking slowly at first, then picking up speed. She didn't care that she had lost her album or ruined her sign. She had something far more precious, far more unforgettable. She had a story of a kindness so profound, so unexpected, it had changed her forever. The rain continued to fall, but Marybeth, under her new umbrella, felt a warmth radiating from within, banishing the chill. Marybeth walked, or rather floated, through the downpour, the black umbrella held carefully above her head. The world around her was still blurry with rain and the last wisps of the storm, but her own vision was crystal clear. Every detail of the encounter was burned into her memory. The concern in his eyes, the gentle touch of his fingers, the easy chuckle, the quick wink. It felt real, like she had stepped into a movie scene only to realize she was the star. She was still utterly soaked, despite the umbrella, her dress clinging, her shoes squelching, but she didn't care. The physical discomfort was nothing compared to the electric thrill that still coursed through her veins. She felt lighter than air, as if she could float all the way back to her aunt's house without her feet ever touching the ground. When she finally arrived, dripping on the porch, her Aunt Helen peered through the screen door, her eyes widening. "Marybeth. Good heavens, child, you look like a drowned rat. I told you to bring an umbrella." Marybeth just smiled, a dazzling, almost giddy smile that wiped away all traces of her earlier dejection. She held up the black umbrella, which now seemed to glow with a faint internal light. "I got one, Aunt Helen. The king himself gave it to me." "Aunt Helen, A practical woman not easily swayed by celebrity glamour blinked once, twice. Then her jaw dropped. The king, Elvis Presley? She peered closer at the umbrella, then back at Marybeth's beaming face. Are you telling me? Yes. Marybeth practically sang, her voice still a little shaky with excitement. He saw me, Aunt Helen. I was so soaked, and my sign was all ruined, and he just walked right out into the rain and gave me his umbrella. He got completely soaked for me. Aunt Helen, despite her practicality, was a lifelong Elvis fan herself. She gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Oh, Marybeth, oh my goodness gracious. You mean his actual umbrella? The one he was using? Yes, he said. You need this more than I do, darling. And he winked. Marybeth was practically dancing on the porch. She recounted the entire story, from the sudden downpour to the moment his eyes met hers, to his incredible act of kindness. She described the concern in his voice, the warmth of his hand, the way he just shrugged off being drenched. And Helen listened, her eyes wide, tears starting to well up. Well, I never, she whispered, shaking her head in amazement. That man, he truly is something else to do. That for a fan, for just a girl standing in the rain. She pulled Marybeth inside, fussing over her wet clothes, but with a new reverence in her touch. Come on, let's get you into some dry things before you catch pneumonia. And we are going to put this umbrella somewhere special. Marybeth, this is a story you'll tell your grandchildren. Later that evening, after a warm bath and a cup of hot chocolate, Marybeth sat in her room, the black umbrella propped carefully in a corner, already drying. It wasn't just an object anymore, it was a relic, a tangible piece of a moment that had shifted something deep inside her. Before today, Marybeth had felt a little adrift. She loved Elvis's music. She loved the excitement of Memphis, but back home her future felt uncertain. She was supposed to go to secretarial school after graduation, a practical choice her parents encouraged. But Marybeth had always felt a pull towards something more creative, something that involved writing, perhaps even storytelling. She filled notebooks with poems and short narratives, but they always remained hidden, too afraid to share them, too afraid of being told they weren't practical, weren't good enough. But now, looking at that umbrella, feeling the warmth of that memory, something shifted. Elvis's act of kindness wasn't just about shelter from the rain. It was about seeing someone, truly seeing them, and offering help without a second thought, without expecting anything in return. It was a pure, unselfish act that radiated genuine compassion. You shouldn't be out in this, darling, he had said. He had worried about her. A global superstar had taken a moment risked his own comfort to care for a simple fan. It made Marybeth realize that kindness was a powerful force, and that maybe, just maybe, her own quiet dreams weren't so foolish after all. If someone as extraordinary as Elvis Presley could be, so down to earth and compassionate, then maybe the world wasn't just about practicality and expectations. Maybe it was about connection, about heart, about making a difference even in a small way. She picked up her personal journal, a leather-bound book she used to jot down her thoughts and stories. The pages were usually filled with anxieties about the future, self-doubt, and the yearning for something more. But tonight, a new resolve bloomed within her. She uncapped her pen, the tip poised over a fresh page. The story of the umbrella. It was her story, now. And she would tell it. Not just to her aunt, but maybe one day to a wider audience. Elvis's kindness had ignited a spark. It had given her courage. It had given her a voice she hadn't realized she had. The umbrella wasn't just a souvenir. It was a symbol of a dream ignited, a silent promise that she, Marybeth, could also find her own way to shine, and perhaps one day even inspire others, just as Elvis had inspired her. The black umbrella became Marybeth's most prized possession, not for its monetary value, but for the story it carried. She carefully dried it, and then displayed it prominently in her room, a constant reminder of that extraordinary July day. Every time she looked at it, she felt a surge of warmth and a renewed sense of purpose. Life in Memphis for the rest of her summer took on a new vibrancy. The city seemed brighter, the music sweeter. Marybeth continued to visit places associated with Elvis, but now her purpose felt different. It wasn't just about seeing him, it was about soaking in the atmosphere that had shaped a man capable of such profound kindness that kindness became her guiding star. Before the umbrella incident, Marybeth had been a quiet girl, prone to self-doubt. She loved to write, weaving stories and poems in her head and in her journal. But the thought of sharing them, of pursuing writing as anything more than a private hobby, seemed impossible. Her parents, practical and loving, had always steered her towards stable career paths. Secretarial or teaching, Marybeth had always nodded, unsure how to voice the vibrant, imaginative world that lived inside her. But Elvis's simple act had been a profound validation. It showed her that a moment of genuine connection could change everything. If he, the king, could care so much for a random fan, then perhaps her own quiet aspirations weren't so silly. His generosity wasn't just a fleeting gesture. It was an echo of a deeper truth, that human connection and empathy were powerful forces. She started writing with a new ferocity. Her journal filled up not just with her fangirl thoughts, but with fully formed, short stories, character sketches, and vivid descriptions of Memphis, of the people she met, of the emotions she felt. The umbrella sat in her room, a silent muse, encouraging her to pour her heart onto the page. One afternoon, sitting by the window in her aunt's house, watching a sun shower, Marybeth decided she wouldn't go to secretarial school. She would apply to the state university, to their English and journalism program. It was a bold step, one that would undoubtedly shock her parents, but she felt a quiet certainty she hadn't known before. Elvis's act of spontaneous kindness had taught her to be brave, to step out into the rain of uncertainty and trust that something good would come of it. She started researching scholarships, drafting application essays. Her essay topic became obvious. The day Elvis gave her his umbrella, she wrote about the downpour, her despair, the unexpected glimmer of hope, and the profound impact of his simple, selfless act. She poured all her emotions into it, not just the excitement of meeting a celebrity, but the deeper meaning it had for her, the way it had reshaped her perspective and given her the courage to pursue her passion. "You go after it, Marybeth," she said, her eyes twinkling. "That man didn't just give you an umbrella, he gave you a push." Marybeth also found herself acting with more confidence in her daily interactions. She spoke up, more offered help to others, even started volunteering at a local animal shelter. She realized that the spirit of generosity Elvis had shown wasn't exclusive to celebrities. It was something everyone could practice. She remembered how he had looked at her truly, seen her, and she tried to do the same for others. To notice the quiet ones, the ones who might need a small kindness. One day, while helping at the shelter, a shy, nervous little stray dog was brought in. It was terrified, cowering in its cage. Most people walked past, but Marybeth remembered Elvis's gentle concern. She sat by the cage, speaking softly, offering a treat. Slowly, patiently, she gained the dog's trust. It reminded her that even small gestures could have a huge impact. She continued to follow Elvis's career, but her admiration had deepened. It wasn't just about the music or the movies anymore, it was about the man himself, his heart, his genuine connection with people. She saw how he continued to give back, to support charities, to make time for fans whenever he could. She realized that his kindness wasn't a one-off for her. It was part of his character. The summer eventually drew to a close, and Marybeth returned home to Mississippi, carrying not just a suitcase full of clothes, but a heart full of renewed hope, and a very special umbrella. Her parents were, as expected, surprised by her declaration about university and writing. There were discussions, concerns, even a few raised voices. But Marybeth, for the first time, stood her ground. She explained, patiently, passionately, what had happened that day in Memphis, how it had changed her, how it had clarified her path. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice steady, It wasn't just an umbrella, it was a sign. A sign that it's okay to be kind, to believe in something, and to chase your own dreams, even if they seem a little crazy to others. Parents, seeing the quiet conviction in her eyes, the newfound strength in her posture, began to soften. They had always wanted her to be happy, and they could see that this pursuit, this dream of writing, made her truly happy. The story of Elvis's generosity, embellished slightly by Aunt Helen, had even reached them before Marybeth did, painting a picture of an almost mythical encounter that had transformed their daughter. They might not fully understand the writing dream, but they understood the depth of the experience that had sparked. Marybeth felt like she was standing at the edge of a great adventure. The path ahead was uncertain, but she held onto the memory of that day, the feeling of the rain on his face as he handed her the umbrella. It was a tangible symbol of a brave, kind heart, and it gave her the courage to open her own heart to the possibilities of her future. The story of Elvis Presley, giving his umbrella to a fan in the rain, spread like wildfire, carried on the humid Memphis air, and beyond. It started as whispers among the immediate crowd at Sun's studio, then quickly escalated into local gossip. Within days, it was a headline in the Memphis newspapers: King of Kindness. Elvis braves storm for fan. Photographers had managed to snap a few blurry, rain-streaked pictures of the moment. Elvis, umbrella-less and drenched, speaking to a young girl. The girl's face was obscured by the angle in the downpour, but the image of the drenched superstar, selfless and smiling, became iconic almost overnight. Marybeth, back in her quiet Mississippi town, was blissfully unaware of the media frenzy she had inadvertently caused. She had told her story to her aunt, and then to her parents, but she didn't own a television and only occasionally read the local paper. Her focus was on her university applications, and her writing the umbrella a cherished private symbol. Meanwhile, in the bustling world of Elvis Presley, the incident was a topic of much discussion. Colonel Tom Parker, his shrewd manager, initially grumbled about the unplanned stop and the potential for Elvis to catch a cold. "Elvis, you can't just be giving away your personal property like that and getting soaked. What if you get pneumonia before the next tour?" But even the colonel, always with an eye for public perception, had to admit the news coverage was overwhelmingly positive. "The fans love it, Elvis," he conceded, reading one of the glowing articles. "Shows you're a man of the people. Good press." Elvis, however, didn't think of it in terms of good press. He remembered Marybeth's face clearly. He remembered her wide, adoring eyes, the utter despondency written on her drenched face, and the ruined sign. He remembered a simple, heartfelt, "I wanted to see you," she'd whispered. "She looked like she needed it," Colonel Elvis had said, a thoughtful look on his face as he recalled the moment. "Standing out there shivering, I couldn't just leave her." He wasn't a stranger to kindness. In fact, acts of spontaneous generosity were common for him. He often bought cars for strangers or helped out friends in need. But this one felt different, perhaps because it was so public and so purely driven by a moment of empathetic connection. He remembered her gratitude, the shock, and then the radiant joy in her eyes. It made him feel good, truly good, in a way that applause and record sales sometimes couldn't. The story was picked up by national magazines, turning the girl with the umbrella into a minor local legend. Friends and acquaintances in Marybeth's hometown started asking her about it. "Is it true, Marybeth? You're the girl in the paper, the one Elvis gave his umbrella to." Marybeth, initially shy about the sudden attention, found herself retelling the story again and again. Each time it solidified the memory, etched it deeper into her mind. She wasn't just Marybeth, the quiet girl who loved to write. She was Marybeth, the girl Elvis helped. It was a strange identity, one she was still getting used to. Some of the attention was unwanted. A few jealous remarks, a couple of people who thought she was making it up, but mostly it was genuine excitement and admiration. The umbrella, now meticulously clean and dry, became a conversation piece when anyone visited. Her Aunt Helen loved to show it off, recounting the tale with relish. Marybeth, however, never allowed it to be treated as merely a showpiece. It was a deeply personal emblem of a powerful moment. The story's reach wasn't just confined to the papers. It made its way through fan clubs, through letters and phone calls exchanged between devoted Elvis fans across the country. It became another piece of the growing legend of Elvis Presley, the man behind the music, humble, generous, and deeply caring. For Marybeth, the public recognition was secondary to the private transformation. It affirmed that her decision to pursue writing was the right one. She felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just to herself, but to the kindness she had received. She felt compelled to make something meaningful of her life, to honor that spontaneous act of generosity. She continued her work on her university applications, spending hours crafting essays that explored themes of kindness, connection, and the unexpected ways life can change. The umbrella sat on her desk, a silent guardian watching over her words. She drew inspiration from the story, from the feelings it evoked. She wrote about how a single moment, a simple gesture, could illuminate a path forward, could give a shy girl the courage to chase her dreams. She was accepted into the English and journalism program at the State University. The acceptance letter arrived on a crisp autumn day, and Marybeth held it like a winning lottery ticket. She knew without a doubt that the essay she had poured her heart into, the one about the rain and the umbrella and the kindness of a king, had played a significant part. As she packed for college, the umbrella was carefully wrapped and placed among her most cherished belonging. It wasn't just an object, but a part of her story, a physical representation of the moment her life had truly begun to unfold in a direction she had only dared to dream of. The whispers about the girl with the umbrella would follow her, but Marybeth was ready. She wasn't just that girl anymore. She was the girl inspired by kindness, ready to write her own future. College was a whirlwind of new experiences. For Marybeth, she thrived in her English and journalism classes, devouring books, honing her writing skills, and finding her voice among like-minded students. The story of the umbrella became a quiet part of her personal legend, a testament to her unique start and the depth of her inspiration. She still kept the umbrella carefully stored, a cherished act, but its importance had evolved. It was no longer just a memento of a celebrity encounter. It was a potent symbol of courage, kindness, and the unexpected turns life could take. Inspired by Elvis's natural empathy, Marybeth decided to focus her journalistic efforts on human interest. Stories that highlighted everyday kindness, resilience, and the power of connection. She believed that just as one act of kindness had changed her life, sharing stories of goodness could have a ripple effect on others. She wrote for the student newspaper, winning awards for her poignant narratives about local community heroes, unsung artists, and people overcoming adversity. Her grades were excellent, but it wasn't just about academic success. It was about feeling a sense of purpose. She often thought of Elvis, not just as the superstar, but as the man who saw a struggling girl in the rain and chose to offer comfort. That vision of him, empathetic and grounded, fueled her passion. One quiet evening, while working on a particularly challenging essay, Marybeth felt a sudden, overwhelming urge. She decided to write to Elvis, not a fan letter asking for an autograph or a photo, but a letter of pure gratitude. She wanted him to know, truly know, the profound impact his simple act had had on her life. She wrote about her dreams, about how his kindness had given her the courage to pursue them, to apply to college, to write about things that mattered. She poured her heart into it, not expecting a reply, just needing to express the depth of her appreciation. "Dear Mr. Presley," she began, her pen flowing across the page. "You probably don't remember me, but on a rainy day last July outside Sun's studio, you gave me your umbrella. I was soaking wet and heartbroken, and your kindness was a beacon in the storm. I just wanted to tell you how much that moment changed my life." She wrote about her previous insecurities, her hidden dream of writing, and how his spontaneous act had made her believe in the power of human connection, inspiring her to step out of her comfort zone. She described how she was now studying journalism, focusing on stories that celebrated kindness and hope. She didn't ask for anything. She just shared her journey, a testament to the ripple effect of a single selfless act. She mailed the letter, a small white envelope disappearing into the mailbox slot, carrying with it a piece of her soul. She tried not to think about it, telling herself it was just for her own peace of mind. Chances of it reaching him, let alone getting a reply, were astronomically small, but just sending it felt like another step forward. Another act of courage inspired by him. Years passed. Marybeth graduated with honors, her portfolio brimming with powerful stories. She landed an internship at a respected newspaper in a larger city, then a full-time position. Her articles gained traction, praised for their sensitivity and their ability to capture the essence of the human spirit. She was making a name for herself slowly but surely as a compassionate storyteller. She occasionally heard news of Elvis, of course his tours, his films, the growing frenzy surrounding him. She still admired him, still loved his music, but her admiration had matured. She saw him as a complex individual, carrying the burden of immense fame, yet still capable of immense generosity. Marybeth, now a young professional, found herself constantly seeking out opportunities to pay forward the kindness she had received. She mentored younger journalists, volunteered her time for local charities, and always tried to remember the lesson of the umbrella, that a small act given freely could have an immeasurable impact. She lived by the principle that if Elvis, with all his fame and demands, could pause for a moment of human connection, then surely she in her own sphere could too. One afternoon, while researching a news story about a local musician, Marybeth found herself back in Memphis. The city still held a special magic for her, a sense of destiny. She walked past Sun Studio memories, flooding back, the relentless rain, the desperate crowd, the flash of a blue shirt, and then the sight of Elvis, stepping out into the storm for her. She smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. The umbrella, still in her possession, was tucked away safely in her apartment, many miles away, but its presence was felt keenly in her heart. It had not just sheltered her from the rain that day. It had sheltered her doubts and nurtured her dreams, setting her on a path she was now walking with purpose and pride. The journey was far from over, but she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Years had turned into a decade since that rainy day in Memphis. Marybeth, now in her late 20s, was a well-respected journalist, her byline appearing regularly in national publications. Her focus remained on human interest stories, always seeking out the quiet moments of bravery, kindness, and resilience in ordinary lives. She often reflected on the profound impact one extraordinary moment of kindness had had on her own ordinary life. She was back in Memphis, on assignment for a major feature story about the changing face of the city's music scene. It was a bustling, vibrant place, still humming with the spirit of rock and roll, still home to the legacy of Elvis Presley. Marybeth often felt a pull towards Graceland, the grand estate that had become a pilgrimage site for fans, but she purposefully kept her distance. Her connection to Elvis was personal, not one to be shared with busloads of tourists. One sweltering afternoon, Marybeth was conducting an interview with a legendary session musician at a small, unassuming recording studio on the outskirts of downtown. The studio was old, with faded posters on the walls and the lingering scent of stale coffee and creativity. It was the kind of place where magic happened quietly. The interview ran long, and by the time Marybeth packed up her equipment, dusk was settling, painting the Memphis sky in hues of orange and purple. As she stepped out of the studio, the air still thick with humidity, she noticed a cluster of discreet black cars parked down the street, their engines idling softly. A few hushed figures stood nearby, looking like security. Her journalist's instinct immediately kicked in. Something was up. She walked casually in the direction of the cars, pretending to check her phone, her eyes scanning the scene, and then she saw him. A familiar figure, older now, a little heavier perhaps, but undeniably him. He was emerging from another slightly more secluded studio building further down the block, accompanied by a couple of men. He was wearing a dark suit, his hair still impeccably styled even in the humidity. He looked tired perhaps, but still carried that undeniable aura, that magnetism that drew all eyes to him. He was talking quietly with one of the men, a serious expression on his face. Marybeth froze. It had been years. She had thought about him, written about the impact of his kindness, but she hadn't actually seen him up close like this in so long. He wasn't surrounded by a frenzied crowd this time, just a few security personnel ensuring his privacy. This was a rare, unguarded moment. Her heart began to pound. A familiar rhythm from that distant, rainy day. She felt the same surge of awe, the same sense of unreality. Here he was, the man who had unknowingly set her life on its current course. She stood there, partially obscured by a large oak tree, watching him. She wasn't dressed like a fan anymore. She was in professional attire, her hair neatly pulled back, a notepad and recorder in her hand. No sign, no album, just a quiet journalist observing. He walked slowly towards one of the waiting cars, still deep in conversation. His profile was clear to her, the strong jawline, the thoughtful expression. She wondered what he was talking about. What weighty decisions were on his mind? He carried the world on his shoulders, she knew. And yet he had stopped for her all those years ago. A strong gust of wind suddenly swept through the street, kicking up dust and leaves. A sudden reminder of the unpredictable Memphis weather. Elvis paused instinctively, pulling his jacket tighter. For a fleeting second his gaze swept across the street, as if searching for something, or perhaps just taking in the evening air. His eyes, those impossibly blue eyes, swept over Marybeth's hiding spot. For a split second she felt them connect with hers, just as they had done on that rainy day. There was no recognition in them, of course. Why would there be? She was just another face in the fading light, another passerby. But still that familiar jolt went through her, that powerful sense of connection. It was as if a silent message passed between them, a whisper across the years. You did good. Your kindness changed me. Before she could process the moment, before she could even think of stepping out, one of the security guards opened the car door. Elvis ducked inside and the door closed with a soft thud. The engine hummed, and the black car glided away into the twilight, disappearing around the corner. Marybeth was left standing by the oak tree. A single silent tear tracing a path down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of profound gratitude. It wasn't the right moment, and she wasn't that girl anymore. She was Marybeth, the journalist, the woman who had built a life inspired by an act of kindness. Seeing him again, so close, so real, had brought it all, flooding back the umbrella, the rain, the fear, the hope. It affirmed everything she had done, every choice she had made. His presence, even from a distance, was a reaffirmation of her path, a quiet validation of the profound impact of empathy and compassion. She might never get to tell him how much that moment meant, how it shaped her entire adult life. But perhaps she realized she didn't need to. He had given her something far more valuable than an umbrella. He had given her a reason to believe in herself, a direction for her life, and a story to tell. And in every article she wrote, in every story of human connection she shared, she was in a way telling his story too. The story of how kindness could change a life. Months after her near encounter with Elvis in Memphis, Marybeth was immersed in a new ambitious project. Her editor, impressed by her series on local heroes, had given her the green light to pursue a long-form investigative piece on the impact of spontaneous acts of generosity. How small gestures of kindness could create ripple effects. It was a story she felt uniquely qualified to tell. Given her own history, she was deep in research, interviewing people across the country who had been recipients or perpetrators of such acts when an unexpected package arrived at the newspaper office addressed to her. It was a thick envelope, official-looking, with no return address, but bearing a Memphis postmark. Her heart did a strange little flutter. Inside, nestled between two pieces of cardboard, was a crisp, beautifully typed letter on heavy cream paper. The letterhead was simple: Elvis Presley Enterprises. Marybeth's breath hitched. Below the letterhead, in elegant cursive, was a familiar signature. Elvis Presley? Marybeth sank into her desk chair, her hands trembling slightly as she unfolded the letter. Could it be, after all these years? The letter read, "Dear Marybeth, please forgive the delay in responding to your heartfelt letter. It took some time to reach me as I receive a great many messages from fans, and my staff works tirelessly to ensure I see the ones that truly stand out. Your letter did more than stand out, it touched me deeply. I do remember that day. The rain was coming down something fierce, and I saw you standing there shivering but still holding on. Just felt like the right thing to do to offer some shelter. To hear that such a simple gesture could have such a profound impact on your life that it inspired you to pursue your dreams and to dedicate your work to stories of kindness and hope. Well, Marybeth, that means more to me than words can say. It reminds me why I do what I do, why those connections with people matter more than all the lights and the applause. Your dedication to storytelling, to highlighting the good in people is a beautiful thing. It takes a special kind of heart to see that and to share it with the world. I believe that kindness, like a good song, has the power to uplift and transform. I understand you're now a journalist. Perhaps one day our paths will cross properly, and you can tell me more about the stories you're writing. Until then, please know that your letter brought a genuine smile to my face and a quiet sense of pride. Keep doing what you're doing, Marybeth. Keep sharing the light with warmest regards and respect. Elvis Presley." Marybeth read the letter once, twice, then a third time, her eyes blurring with unshed tears. It was real, he remembered. And her letter, the one she had sent without expectation, had truly reached him, truly touched him. The king of rock and roll had responded to her. Confirmation, the validation in his words felt like a warm embrace. It wasn't just a fan letter, it was a connection, a reciprocal act of acknowledgement that transcended celebrity. He wasn't just thanking her for her fan mail, he was acknowledging the profound ripple effect of his own kindness and celebrating her journey. This wasn't an invitation to meet him, not directly, but it was an acknowledgement that a future meeting could happen, that he was aware of her and her work. "Perhaps one day our paths will cross properly," he had written. It was more than she could have ever dreamed of. The letter became a new source of inspiration for her current project. She had been searching for a compelling opening, a story that truly encapsulated the power of a single act of kindness. Now she had it. She would start her article with her own story, the story of the umbrella, and how it had led her to dedicate her career to understanding and sharing acts of human compassion. She would weave her personal narrative into the larger tapestry of her research, making the piece deeply authentic and powerful. The article, when it was finally published, became a sensation. Readers were captivated by Marybeth's personal journey, the vulnerability of her opening, and the powerful message it conveyed about the enduring impact of kindness. The piece resonated deeply, prompting countless letters from readers sharing their own stories of generosity, both given and received. Marybeth found herself invited to speak at conferences, to share her insights on human connection and the power of empathy. Her career flourished. She wasn't just a journalist anymore. She was an advocate, a storyteller with a mission. The umbrella, once a symbol of a dream ignited, was now also a symbol of a dream realized. And the letter from Elvis, carefully framed and kept in her private study, was a constant reminder that sometimes the most profound connections are made, and the simple act of kindness can echo through a lifetime, inspiring a ripple effect of good in the world. Marybeth knew more than ever that she was living her purpose, driven by the memory of a king who on a rainy day had chosen to give. Years later, Marybeth was at the height of her career. Her articles were renowned for their depth and human touch, and her book, The Ripple Effect of Kindness, had become a bestseller. She had spoken at universities, led workshops, and continued to champion stories that reminded people of their shared humanity. She was no longer just the girl with the umbrella. She was Marybeth, a respected voice in journalism and a passionate advocate for empathy. Her work had brought her to various cities, often to speak at events. One particular invitation stood out: a Prodigious charity gala in Memphis, celebrating the power of community and philanthropy. Marybeth was invited as the keynote speaker to share her own story and the broader themes of her work. As she prepared her speech, she thought of the umbrella, still carefully preserved at home, and the letter from Elvis which had given her so much courage and validation. She knew this was a full-circle moment, returning to the city where it all began. But now, as someone who had forged her own path inspired by a single act of generosity. The night of the gala was glittering. The ballroom was packed with influential figures, philanthropists, and local celebrities. Marybeth, poised and confident in a tailored gown, felt a familiar flutter of nerves, mixed with deep gratitude. This was all a testament to that rainy day. As she made her way through the reception greeting guests, a quiet buzz went through the room, heads turned towards the entrance. Marybeth, mid-conversation, instinctively looked up. There he was, older, yes, with silver tracing his temples, but still instantly recognizable, still carrying that undeniable star power. Elvis Presley, making a rare public appearance for the charity. He was accompanied by a small entourage, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity, his gaze sweeping the room, his famous smile a little softer, a little more worn, but still capable of lighting up the space. Marybeth's heart hammered. After all these years, after the letter, after her successful career, here they were in the same room. Not just a chance encounter on a street, but a shared moment, on shared ground both. There to celebrate the very thing his kindness had ignited in her. She felt a hand on her arm. It was the event. Marybeth, I'd like to introduce you, Mr. Presley. This is Marybeth Larson, our keynote speaker. This evening, she's a remarkable journalist and author. Elvis turned, his gaze meeting hers. Those blue eyes, so familiar from her memories, looked at her with polite curiosity. There was no instant recognition, of course. How could there be? She was a woman now, not a drenched teenager. Marybeth felt a lump form in her throat, but she swallowed it down, maintaining her composure. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Presley," she said, her voice steady, though her hands were clasped tightly behind her back. Elvis offered a warm, polite smile. "The honor's all mine, ma'am. I've heard good things about your work." This was her moment, not to gush as a fan, but to connect as one human being to another, to acknowledge the profound impact he'd had. "Mr. Presley," she began, a soft knowing smile touching her lips. "You might not remember, but many years ago, on a very rainy day outside Sun's studio, you gave a very wet, very heartbroken teenage girl your umbrella. You got completely soaked your shelf." His smile faltered slightly, replaced by a look of dawning recognition. His brow furrowed in thought, then his eyes widened, a flicker of memory igniting within them. "The umbrella," he murmured, almost to himself. You're that young lady." Marybeth nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, sir, that was me. And I want to thank you, not just for the umbrella, but for the profound kindness you showed that day. It changed my life. It gave me the courage to pursue my dream of writing, to tell stories about human connection, about the power of kindness. You taught me that one small act can truly create a ripple effect." Elvis's expression softened completely, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. He reached out a hand, not for a handshake, but to lightly touch her arm, a gesture of shared understanding. "Marybeth," he said, his voice a low rumble filled with genuine emotion. "I remember that day. I remember your face. I knew that umbrella meant something to you. But I never knew it meant that much, that it would inspire so much good." He looked genuinely moved, perhaps even a little overwhelmed. "Your letter," he continued, remembering. "It reached me, Marybeth, it truly did. It was one of the most beautiful letters I've ever received. It means a lot to know that something I did, just a simple thing, helped to find your path." He paused, his gaze thoughtful. "You found your voice, Marybeth, and you're using it to share light. That's a true gift." It was a perfect, full-circle moment. The gratitude she had carried, for so long the impact he had made, was now acknowledged, shared, and understood. The shy, drenched girl had become a woman of purpose, standing before the man who had set her on her way. Later, as Marybeth gave her keynote speech, she shared the story of the umbrella, not just as a personal anecdote, but as a living example of the evening's theme. She spoke of how a simple act of compassion, given freely and without expectation, could transform a life and in turn inspire countless others. She spoke of Elvis not just as a legend, but as a deeply human and kind individual who had shown her the true power of giving. As she concluded, she looked towards the table where Elvis was seated. He met her gaze and gave her a small, private smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history, their enduring connection. The applause that followed was thunderous, not just for Marybeth's words, but for the profound truth she had so beautifully revealed. Marybeth's life continued to flourish. She carried the memory of that rainy day and that poignant reunion. Always, the umbrella, the letter, and the man who had given them meaning remained etched in her heart. It was a heartwarming testament to the enduring power of human kindness, a reminder that even the simplest gestures can weave the most extraordinary tapestries of a life, proving that sometimes a little rain can bring forth the most beautiful blossoms.